What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Dan is DTM on Twitter, or just DTM for this channel's sake. But anyways, guys, thank you for joining me. I did see, obviously, today that 343 posted their update finally. Obviously, this roadmap has been long anticipated. A lot of people have been clamoring for it. The game needs it. The population numbers obviously have been struggling in recent weeks. On Steam, especially. Xbox is still doing pretty decent numbers right now, but obviously not the powerhouse that Microsoft and 343 wanted it to be at launch. But I think it's important here for us to kind of dig into a few things. So I think first I'm going to just kind of go through like a breakdown of what they talked about in this update and what we want to, see from the game moving forward and go from there. But it is important that a lot of these changes that they've been making and content they're delivering and feedback they're listening to, all of it has come from fans. Like, your feedback matters. Absolutely. At the end of the day, your feedback matters. You should always, deliver your feedback in a constructive way where you aren't, throwing things down the developer's throat. For instance, there's a better way to say something than, "This game sucks. This is awful. Get out of here. This is garbage." Don't say that. That literally does nothing. That does nothing to advance the conversation forward, and you're not providing valuable feedback for the developers. So anyways, let's move forward here. So they do say, and this is Joe Staten that is writing this update, of course. I'm here to answer two questions that we know are top of mind for the Halo community. What is the Halo Infinite team working on right now? So this is the focus of the Halo Infinite team in priority order. Number one, addressing issues negatively impacting the player experience. I'm going to kind of break these down one by one here. So that's very important. So there's been a lot of issues since launch that have been foundational issues. There's color issues, where you can't customize your colors the way that you used to be able to in previous Halo games. The new armor core system, I think, was sold as something that was going to revolutionize that, but it didn't really do that. There is some very cool armor coatings out there. I'm not going to say there isn't, but I think the key factor is people want to be able to change your base layer colors. So I think that's something they're going to be working on. But again, that takes time. There's another thing that a lot of people have been clamoring for, and they've done a very good job of responding to, which was the Battle Pass feedback and the XP issues. So originally there was a very slow progression rate. I think they personally went a little bit too far, because now people have been finished with the Battle Pass for months. However, you also have to keep in mind that normally seasons are only going to be 3 months, as opposed to this one that is 6 months. So I think that's important to note as well, that they kind of went too far in the other direction. But in my opinion, that's better, because you're giving people, you're getting people more happy about the advancement of their XP and their progression. The biggest issue for me about progression is that there isn't a base layer progression system. There isn't things to unlock just by progressing through multiplayer. There is the Battle Pass, but you have to purchase that. And in previous Halo games, there has always been some kind of progression system to get new armors, or ever since Halo 3, there's been new armor, new, effects, stuff like that. So I think that's, again, something they're working on. As they've said before, they've said specifically that they're working on better ways to, complete a better progression system. So that is something they're working on. So when you think about all these, base layer issues that the game is having right now, that 343 is having to go back and change, those issues are foundational issues. Those things have to be, at least worked on, not finished, but they have to be at least be worked on in order to have a future game that people are excited about. So when you're working on this base layer that isn't even where it needs to be right now, the game launched in technically November with the multiplayer launch, but then December for campaign as well. But if you don't have that foundation where it needs to be on day one, that's a problem for future content. And we're seeing that right now because we're in March right now and we haven't seen significant updates to content. We've had, a couple of new game types that have been added to the game that technically were already there. They were just bringing them up as seasonal type events. For instance, Fiesta originally was that, and then they ended up putting Fiesta into the actual playlist selection of the game. So I think that's very important. But also, I also believe that if you don't have that base layer at launch, as I got a little sidetracked there, if you don't have that base layer at launch, you subsequently are delaying or pushing back the content that you had for the months after that. So for instance, their season one was supposed to be 3 months originally, and what they were planning on doing was scattering content through that first month. So what happens is you launch in November, you discover all these issues that need to be fixed and changed from community feedback, and that essentially sets back your content roadmap that you had planned back further. So you're throwing that back further. That's why they delayed the season one end another 3 months to where it ends now, because that was what they needed to do to keep a safe and healthy studio environment. And that's very important right there. Safe, healthy studio environment. That is the most important thing to a video game developer. They don't want to treat their developers like garbage because you get things like their Glassdoor reviews in the past. And I firmly believe, after reading many of those Glassdoor reviews, many of the ones that are older stem from Halo the Master Chief Collection's long documented history of issues, and that's mainly based around the game having about 8 different game engines that it uses, and trying to get all of that technology to work with one another in one game package, which now, to their credit, has come full circle, and it is a great game now. It is in a great state, but the road to get there was a very rough road for them. That's when things changed at 343, not before that. Not before that. Chris Lee, who was the studio head of Halo Infinite before Joseph Staten took over for the campaign team last year, before all that happened, I firmly believe that Chris Lee was not doing well in terms of his management style, because Chris Lee was a great designer. I absolutely loved some of the things he did with Halo 5, and the multiplayer of Halo 5 was fantastic. So I think the big issue there was his studio leadership. So then what do? In fall 2021, they say, Chris, we're going to, kind of split ways from you. You're going to continue to work at Microsoft, but you're not going to work at 343 anymore. We're going to bring on Joe Staten, and they're going to bring on the other guy who worked on the MCC team, which his name's escaping me right now, of course, but he worked on the MCC support team, and he came on to be the head of the multiplayer side of Halo Infinite, which is very important because both those key figures, him and Joe Staten, well regarded in not only the community but in video games in general. They are both people that are known for getting things done. Like Joe back in his days at Bungie did so much more than just the writing. He was only credited for the writing or whatever, but going back and watching Bungie vidocs of past and watching behind the scenes documentaries of Halos in the Bungie era being made, Joe had a huge impact on that. So I firmly believe when Joe joined the team, Phil Spencer came to Joe and said, okay, what do we need to do to launch next fall? Because we have to launch next fall. And Joe came to him and said, okay, here's the things what we have to do if you want to launch next fall. That doesn't mean that the game that came out the next fall, which is what we got, was going to be perfect, because Phil Spencer wasn't looking for perfect. Phil Spencer was looking for whatever came out in fall of 2021 is what he needed to be there, and he needed it to be as polished as it could be and as good as it can be in that time frame, because Microsoft needed they still have a first party problem. They still have a problem where they aren't releasing enough content, and that's because they late in the generation, last generation, started acquiring studios finally, that has gotten them to the point where they have enough studios now. It's just a matter of getting those games to actually release, which are still many years out. So anyways, Phil goes to Joe, says, we need this game to launch next fall. So Joe says, okay, we've got to push back Forge. We've got to push back co-op campaign. We've got to do things, that we may not like. Obviously there's things in the game that are glaring issues. For instance, color customization is one of those issues. Battle pass progression is an issue like that. There's things that absolutely would have been iterated on and changed over the course of development if they were given more time. And the problem is, you can't just say that 343 is a terrible developer because the game launched badly. That's not giving you yourself accurate background of what's going on at the studio and what's going on the Microsoft side of things. It's not to say that, necessarily Microsoft's at fault or 343's at fault. It's more so to give yourself an idea of what is happening there. Like, Microsoft had to have Halo Infinite launch last fall. They had to have that. So what did you have to sacrifice to get that for 343? That was what they were looking for. So that's, take that as you will, but that's my perspective on it and what I've seen from the facts that we are given. So anyways, moving on to the next thing that Joe talks about, that's going to be the focus. So number 2 is completing Season 2 and delivering it as promised on May 3rd. Obviously, that's a huge thing for them to make sure Season 2 starts right. You can't launch Season 2 and have things, spiral out of control again, because you will, again, lose the narrative, and you will have people just going crazy about the game, saying, this is awful, this is in a bad state, yada, yada, yada. It just keeps building and building and building. And they have talked about a little bit already of what we are expecting to see from Season 2, which Season 2 is called Lone Wolves. And this theme, just to say, like, this theme so far looks super cool. I am super excited about these new armor cores we are getting with the new season. It looks super cool. Almost looks like World War II-esque or World War I-esque. I'm not good with history in terms of war history, but like, it has that aesthetic to the armor cores, and I really like that. I think that's really cool. So yeah, I think that's awesome. There's also going to be a new Fracture in Season 2, of course, with more free content. There's going to be a new big team battle map called Breaker, and there's going to be new modes, including Last Spartan Standing, which I imagine is going to be, essentially a like survival type game mode, similar to Battle Royale. Like Last Spartan Standing obviously implies one person left, so similar to that type of experience, obviously in a much smaller form factor, mind you. But that actually sounds really cool, because like, if you have a big team battle match, Last Spartan Standing, there's 24 people in a big team battle match now, so 1 out of 24. That's pretty cool, actually. A free for all elimination mode, which is very cool, as well as another new mode named Land Grab, which kind of sounds like similar, like a take on King of the Hill is what it seems like to me. My guess. Oh, and of course, the return of an updated and all-time fan favorite mode, King of the Hill. So there you go. Land Grab might be some kind of derivation of that or take on that. So that'll be interesting. They've got some concept art for Breaker as well, which it looks very cool, like a mining-esque screenshot there, so it's kind of cool. We're also getting a new arena map in Season 2 called Catalyst, which has a very Forerunner-esque architecture to it, which I feel like many people have been saying, like, I think that the multiplayer maps are missing like more of that Forerunner aesthetic, so it's very cool that we're getting that. And of course, they're going to have more to share about the Season 2 maps, modes, customization options, and narrative content in April. So obviously we're only a month away from April, so that's exciting. We get even more information to see what we 100% are getting in season 2. So that's very cool. I'm very excited for season 2, and hopefully it continues the train, or starts the continuation of the train of Halo Infinite. The last thing that they mention here is number 3 focus for the studio, which is continuing work on campaign co-op, Forge, and season 3. So obviously campaign co-op is not an easy task for an open world game. There's many developers that have talked about how hard it is to make campaign co-op work, not just play well, but work. Famously, you know, there's been so many famous examples, but even one like more recently, Guerrilla Games, they talked about the intent to possibly want to do co-op for Horizon Forbidden West. They realized technically it really wasn't an option for them. It wasn't something that they could do because they wanted to have this world that was built insanely, and they wanted it to be experienced from a single player perspective, because you throw in another player, it exponentially makes things harder to develop. So I think that's important to put in perspective. And I can tell you for firsthand, Forbidden West would be a fantastic co-op game because you are with a companion for the entire camp. Well, I haven't beaten it yet, but so far I've been with a companion the entire time, which lends itself perfectly for a campaign, co-op campaign experience. But again, it's not necessarily possible without a ton of investment and work. And obviously, I commend 343 for continuing to work on this. Yes, it sucks it wasn't at launch. Absolutely. The game should have been delayed. Absolutely. Again, it should have been delayed. Here's the thing. Here's the thing where people misunderstand me. The game absolutely should have been delayed because the game wasn't content, or it wasn't feature complete at launch. But I'm personally not upset that it didn't get delayed, because otherwise I wouldn't have had the hundreds of hours of enjoyment that I've already gotten out of Halo Infinite. I have nothing holding me to it that's saying like, oh, gun to my head, I have to play this. Like, but I love playing the game. It's fantastic. The gameplay is fantastic. And I'm not discounting the issues with the game whatsoever by saying that. I'm just saying that, like, I'm happy that I got to play it when I got to play it, but also, you know, noting that the game should have been delayed probably. But anyways, yes, they're making great progress on Campaign Network Co-op. They're also working on split screen co-op as well, which, remember, that is just as difficult to make because you're rendering 2 different screens of the same game, and you're on one console, which is only technically powered for one experience. So that makes things a little bit more challenging, especially on next-gen hardware where you have even more going on the screen. So they do end up saying that they're not going to be able to ship Campaign Network Co-op on May 3rd at the start of Season 2, but we're still aiming to deliver Campaign Network Co-op later in Season 2. So it's not going to be there at the start, but they're hoping to have it in the middle of Season 2. Not optimal, again, but if it's not ready, don't release it. I mean, the fact of the matter is we are past the point, and that's where I get irritated as well, seeing people complain about this. We are past the point where this game mode co-op campaign could launch with the game. So, like, at this point, don't complain when they're saying it's not coming out yet, because it's not ready. Like, I don't want something released that's not ready. I don't want to play something that's broken. That doesn't even make sense. So yes, it sucks that that it wasn't there at launch, and it's not going to be ready at the start of Season 2, but it will be available later in Season 2. And they will share a release date for that and split screen co-op as soon as we can, they said. They're also making great progress on Forge. It does seem like they have the goal. They do say they have the goal of shipping Forge with Season 3. Again, hope for the best of launching with Season 3. And if it gets pushed back a little bit, it's not the end of the world. We cannot go into this thing saying it needs to come out now. It needs to come out immediately. There's a content problem. We need Forge to get new maps. we need the Forge to be in the best possible place for it to be when it launches. We don't need it to be as soon as it can. We need it to be in the best state that it can be. So pushing it back until the start, or not pushing it back, it's still at the start of season 3 makes sense, and we'll see if they can hit that. That would be fantastic if they can, but again, let's not freak out if it doesn't come on day 1 of season 3. Anywho, in season 3 content, they say they're obviously continuing work on season 3 as well. So that's very important as well. And also we have a new seasonal content event next week called Tactical Ops, which will be essentially like takes on the Tactical Slayer mode, which is SWAT, with new Mark 7 core focused rewards to actually earn in that event. So obviously it's not, super new content, but you're getting new things. You're getting new chances to earn new armor. I think that's great. Obviously, again, I'm not going to reiterate the same things I've already been saying this entire video. So, and then at the end here, Joe says, on behalf of the entire team, thank you again for your patience and your passion. Please keep the feedback coming. Know that we are listening and learning, and that we are working hard to deliver more Halo Infinite content that we hope you love to play. So the last thing I'll say is, like, going on Twitter and blasting Unishek or blasting Brian Gerard, absolutely unacceptable. You give constructive criticism. I don't want to see people lambasting 343 because of them not getting a certain feature or a certain map or a certain mode on the timeline that they thought it was going to be. You are guaranteed nothing. So, like, my final comment here is, if you're an expert and you think you know how to make a video game, for instance, a Halo fan-made video game, as well as some in the Halo community seem to think that they do, then you go ahead and make a Halo fan-made video game. You make it, and you release it to the public, and you watch as your game gets criticized every fucking day. These people, these developers, slave over this game every fucking day. Stop. Stop with the hate. These are real people that are working to make this game the best it can be every single day. To make the best damn game they can make. Now, constructive criticism isn't the issue. Blind toxicity and the blatant disregard for facts is the issue. Treat developers better. Most issues that people don't even want to talk about with AAA game development is usually caused by the publisher. So if you want to point blame, choose the right source, but do it in a constructive way. Nobody wants to be torn down 24/7 for their work. Nobody. I don't care what you're doing, whether you're cleaning bathrooms or working on Halo Infinite. Just be better, Halo community. That's all I've got. See you guys next time.